Welcome, Spartans, to the podcast Evolved Holiday Book Club. I'm your host, Aaron, and with me this week is David.
Hello.
And Drew.
Happy holidays. Happy Halo days. Halo. Halo
Holidays.
Halo holidays.
If you're listening to this is our pre-recorded holiday special because we're all enjoying ourselves and eating food and generally being fat and awesome.
Don't you feel special?
Yeah, everyone feels special. This book club, if you're listening, you should all hopefully already know, is Escalation Volume 1. That's issues 1 to 6 for anyone that's been collecting them individually, like myself. It's basically 2 arcs. The first arc is Spartan Ops Season 2. Probably the best way to describe it.
It's pretty much exactly what it is. Definitely what it feels like.
Well, I mean, that was the plan, right? That's exactly what it... Leading up to Escalation. See, when did Escalation start? It was... Because Halo 4 came out in 2000...
Early 2014?
Yeah, Halo 4 came out in 2012. So This started 2 years later, and we had already finished Season 1 of Spartan Ops by 2013.
Yeah.
So that's weird. There's like a year gap there to continue the story.
It's because Spartan Ops went down like a ton of bricks, so they just had to
unexpectedly.
Yeah.
Well, if you remember, like Spartan Ops Season 1 was launched in 2 parts.
Yeah, I do remember that it wasn't all out at once.
No, there was a break between the two, and then obviously between part 1 and 2, they decided to cut the whole thing.
Yeah, and I remember everybody being like, oh man, Spartan Ops is getting better, and then it still wasn't good. And Call of Duty had like destroyed the retention of Halo 4 players, so they were like, who are we really sending this out to? You know, who's seeing Season 2 or Season 1 of Spartan Ops? Probably not a lot of people.
I think it was just like, take this script and recycle it. We'll put it in something else.
I'm really curious about the reception of Escalation. I've never seen Microsoft or 343 or anybody really formally comment on how it's doing sales-wise, because comics don't really sell like that well.
They do promote it though.
Yeah, I mean they promote on like social media and stuff. I was thinking before we started the show, I was thinking, what if this had gone down a little differently? Because, you know, maybe what if 343 like did some testing and realized that what they were putting together for Spartan Ops just wasn't really passing the quality bar, and they maybe had like halted on production of that and put that focus into making the quality of the competitive multiplayer and just the regular what was it called? What was it called?
What are we talking
Infinity's
War Games?
War Games, thank you very much. If they had just focused on War Games and not really worried about Spartan Ops, and then made the story of Spartan Ops Season 1 into a comic and made Season 2 into a comic, and that lasted from like maybe the year of 2013 or something, as opposed to this weird gap. Like, when you started Escalation and started reading basically what is Season 2 of Spartan Ops, did it feel like you were picking up where Spartan Ops left off at all?
It doesn't really, but I think that's because they pick off with Palmer and Lasky. You know, they don't really mention Majestic. They're kind of there, but they're in the background. Actually, until the very end, you don't even realize the whole of Majestic are there. They only ever mention DeMarco the whole way through it.
Yeah, but Palmer is constantly talking to you, Crimson, and Majestic. Like, the two of them are bouncing off each other. It's just, there's no mention of Crimson.
I'm not even sure Crimson are in it. It's Jackknife.
In Escalation, they're not, no.
No, we'll go through, I'll do a summary in a minute anyway, but I feel like they tweaked it. They had the general story there, and they just cut it down, touched it up, and went, this works as 3 issues, you know.
Yeah, go through the synopsis anyway there.
Yeah, go for it.
We'll go through just sort of briefly anyway. The issues, or the episode starts off, I corrected myself when I got it right the first time.
It's all right.
Yeah, this picks off about a year after Halo 4, just after the events of New Phoenix, which is about right, because didn't Spartan Ops take place 6 months after the campaign, something like that?
Yeah, Spartan Ops was 6 months after Halo 4.
Yeah. We start off, it joins Lasky and Palmer, and they're being debriefed on Earth at Bravo 6, which, if anyone's read the Kilo 5 books, is the head of the UNSC, and that's where Oni live. So they do like a brief talk there, and they're about to get chewed out, I think, for everything that happened in Requiem,
right,
until Palmer covers for Lasky. Because if you remember in the very end of Spartan Ops, when Oni sent Palmer off to shoot Halsey, Lasky sends Crimson to stop her, and that's how she ends up getting shot in the arm and escapes.
And hence why she loses her arm.
There's been, for us for a couple years now, an ongoing connection between Palmer and Lasky. And what I find funny about that is we had this whole film establishing the connection between Lasky and Chief, which ultimately wound up to be kind of like, it's nice at the end of Halo 4 because Lasky does Chief a solid, and that's kind of where that pays off as like here's a connection between these two characters, and that explains like why he would have done what he did in Halo 4. But I think it's funny because I'm curious, what is the connection between Palmer and Lasky, like other than what we've physically witnessed? Like how far back does that go?
Well, they're super familiar, and she always refers to him as Tom.
But is it a romantic connection or just a historic thing, like just a working connection?
If I'm going to throw something crazy out there, I'd say that they had something before she was a Spartan, and then she dropped everything to become a Spartan, and now they're in this kind of weird mode.
Yeah, I get that vibe off them
where
as well.
He's her superior, but they're still super familiar.
I'm just curious if this is intentional, this ongoing, like they keep kind of tugging at that as like a pretty solid connection.
I'm not sure at all. It's hard to tell. There's definitely no mention of anything.
No, there isn't, but that doesn't mean it isn't there. I mean, like everything else with Halo, there's stories within stories and stuff that just isn't told yet. Doesn't mean it hasn't happened.
Sorry to interrupt, Aaron. You were doing your synopsis, though.
After that, let's see. Hood goes to the Infinity and takes them on a special mission. They're having peace talks between the brutes and the elites, because basically the brutes are about to fight themselves to death, and then they're afraid that they're going to attack the elites once they start starving. So they go to this Covenant plasma refinery planet, which doesn't seem like the wisest move to begin with. Go to this dodgy backwater sort of factory planet somewhere.
Yeah, but it has this whole kind of neutral ground thing, and it has the ability of like you can't land heavy ships on it, so it kind of makes sense from that point.
I'm just going to throw this out here. If there's ever a Halo MMO or like expansive Mass Effect level RPG for Halo, can we go places that aren't some kind of dodgy backwater place? Because to me personally, that feels like a cop out to be like, here's an unpopulated weird world that's obscure and is only filled with good guys and bad guys. Like there's no other like thing going on here.
Well, for a peace talk between three different factions that were murdering the shit out of each other, it makes sense that you would do it.
50-yard line, just like, here's something that isn't important to one side or the other. That makes sense. But, like, just, I don't know. I think about all that. Like, the closest thing we got to a populated thing, in my experience, with the exception of Halo 5 on that one planet, started falling apart, that was Meridian, right? That was
Meridian, yeah.
Okay. Was New Alexandria and Reach.
Yeah.
When you when you drop out of the ship, spoilers, George sacrifices himself and tosses you. And you like land outside of New Alexandria and you're like running through and there's civilians. For like the first time ever in Halo, they just casually go, hey, here's some civilians, protect them. And you're like, what? Since when?
And then you shoot them and instantly fail.
Yeah, because you're like, what's happening? Oh, okay, whoops. Let me throw a plasma grenade in the middle of all that.
That works.
I'd like to see more of that, but if so what I'm saying is if there was ever an RPG or something, I'd like it to be in a world that is, like, I'd like settings to be more along the lines of, like, the Citadel and Mass Effect and stuff like that, where you're like, this is the center of, the population. These are very populated epicenters,
So where does the story go then? So they're pretty much on the planet.
They go to the planet, they start their peace talks, and then surprise, surprise, they get attacked by a group of elite sort of zealots, I think's the best description for them. They attack them.
They're just another faction.
Yeah, the Spartans fend them off for a little bit.
Are they Jules?
And then,
no.
well, it reveals it later in the issue that they're kind of not. But they attack the group, they fend them off, and then they go to evacuate, and on the way back to the troop transport, it's destroyed, and then their communications are cut off with Infinity, so they have to run and hide in I think it's like an arms bunker or something.
Just a depot, vehicle depot.
Yeah, they run to this depot, and then they make
or
plans
a depot,
to split
maybe.
into... No,
Yeah.
depot.
Depot.
And there's probably a U in there somewhere. Shh.
No, please, God, no. Depot is not spelled D-E-P-O-U-T. E. It's D-E-P-O-U-T-E.
Probably.
Don't worry about it.
It's the future, okay?
So they split into two teams, and Polymer takes Jackknife and DeMarco, and I assume the rest of Majestic, but they never mention Majestic, just DeMarco.
Yeah, and your man Strugs?
Yeah, Scroogs. Such an awful name.
But at the same time, Lasky and Ray, Spartan Ray, go off to try and reestablish communications. So there's like 3 groups.
There's kind of these 2 groups, going along. So Lasky and Ray go off to do their thing, and Polymer then has to defend the ambassadors and blows up a Covenant Lich with her helmet full of hand grenades.
Yeah, I feel that like this whole arc is like pretty much look how badass Polymer is, like all the time. Polymer's is doing shit all the time. So she takes her helmet off, fills it with grenades, and throws it into the grav lift of a lick, blows it up, which is kind of awesome. But I still don't like her.
Yeah, and then she falls off the catwalk at one stage and then slaughters an elite on the ground and does a couple of different wee things like that. They get to the next bunker that they were going to defend themselves and find some AA guns. And then DeMarco realizes the AA guns have no targeting systems anymore, so they have to be manually operated. And whilst they're doing that, Ray and Lasky find the Covenant that are guarding the generator, destroy it, and get in contact with Infinity.
Yeah, and the purpose to destroy that generator was that there was a jamming signal going on the planet that was preventing communications. So that's kind of how they managed to get away with it.
Yeah, they get that, and they call in reinforcements, but find out it's going to take too long for them to get to Polymer. So Polymer and Majestic. Oh wait, we skipped out one tiny.
We did. I was going to say it to you just before they do all that kind of stuff.
Once they've cut out communications and they get back, when Polymer gets to the bunker, Scroogs, the leader of Team Jackknife, kills the rest of his team and then reveals himself to be a UNSC or a spy.
He never really says who for.
Yeah, he says for people. He has his reasons, and
he has his own agenda, and he kind of takes Lord Hood kind of hostage.
Yeah, and there's this awesome little scene where Polymer shoots Hood in the leg to get him out of the way so she can tackle Scruggs out through a window and punch him to death.
Pretty much, it's a very quick fight,
reference.
whereas...
Shoot the hostage in the leg.
Yeah, she just, sorry, and Scruggs is like, why are you apologising to me? And he's like, I'm not talking to you. And then poor old Hood gets shot. So I forgot about that little bit. So she takes him out. Yeah, like you said, it's all really quick. It's kind of over in half a page.
But she's talking to Lasky on the radio, and she's like, just a minute, I gotta take care of something. It just fucking demolishes this dude.
And then they find out that there's something like 10 Covenant ships inbound to take them out. So I think they find a rough little Covenant tug, they call it. So they stick all the VIPs on it, and Polymer's going to fly them out whilst Majestic give them cover fire from these turrets. And then the last thing we sort of see on the ground is there's a Banshee chasing Polymer in the tug. DeMarco is about to take it out with his turret, and in the background there's a Banshee coming in to attack him. He takes out the turret, Polymer goes to congratulate him, and then realises he's gone and the turret's been wiped out.
Pretty much DeMarco just gets wiped out.
Yeah, I think that would have been the big sort of
finale of
yeah.
season 2, yeah. Because they were obviously building him up as to be a character, because he was always wisecracking jokes and stuff all through.
And then I kind of think this would have led into season 5, is that DeMarco died, Thorn becomes the leader of Majestic, and then Thorn would have become a member of Osiris.
Quite possibly that could have been his arc, yeah.
And that would have been how he promoted up through it. It finishes on the Infinity, where they're having the funeral for Jackknife and DeMarco. And that's after Lasky is talking with Hood, and Hood reveals that only a couple of people knew the planet where the talks were going to take place, and that Scroogs could never have had clearance to find that out. So it means they've got a mole somewhere higher up the chain of command. And that issue kind of ends with them sort of looking ominously out the window with a couple of cups of coffee.
Yeah, and that's just the end of the first story arc. That's the first 3 episodes.
Yeah, that's the first
Issues.
3... Yeah, the first 3 cover that, and that, as it feels like Spartan Ops season 1.
And I kind of agree with something that Drew had said before, where that this obviously would have made a great season 2, I think, of Spartan Ops. But then, as Drew had mentioned, it'd probably just be what we got would have been the cutscenes, and they would have been awesome.
Yeah, everything that we saw in Escalation was the cool part of season 2, and then what we would have had to slog through would have been playing more of Spartan Ops. And I'm not like sitting over here like completely shitting on Spartan Ops. I'm just saying the cost wasn't enough for the payoff. The payoff is like really cool, really high quality cutscenes and a cool story. But man, like having to endure, like, I mean, some people enjoyed it and it's enjoyable in small spurts, but the amount that you have to endure to get to this cool stories, just the gameplay wasn't there. It wasn't fun.
No. It was very disconnected from the story as well.
I feel like, especially after reading these in comic form and then going back and rereading them, you know, for this and like just discussing the story arc here, like it would have been so much cooler to have season 1 as just a comic that would have came out after Halo 4 and then enjoying this story that we're seeing here shortly after that, instead of Halo 4 being kind of like this false start for 343 where they're like, here's Halo, it's back, Chief is back, here it is, and here's, you know, the continue.
No, they did a great job with the single player.
No. Yeah, he made a triumphant return, and Halo came back. I think we're witnessing now a more effective strategy of what they're doing with Halo 5. You know, that these like free drops of content that are going to be more frequent. Hell, even Destiny, even Bungie announced like in this past week that like the Taken King, quote unquote, like that type of thing where you buy this huge DLC thing, they're kind of moving away from that. And 343 has already done that with Halo 5 saying like, here's some microtransactions that you can have, and that's going to help fund us to be able to support this game. And I think they were trying a model that made sense back then, or, you know, in the lead up to Halo 4, but that model didn't work. That like, hey, we're going to release this content, Spartan Ops Season 1, and then we would probably have to pay for Season 2 or something.
They'd never said that though.
No, because it was half baked. It never wound up happening, because halfway through like making it happen, they were like, oh, this is not going well.
I suppose the theory was kind of good with it, that they could have had this episodic thing that could have filled the void between 4 and 5, you know, if it had paid off.
Episodic content in general, let alone in like AAA video games, has been kind of a weird thing. And I think we're finally getting to the point where people understand what makes good episodic content versus, you know, just releasing episodic content for the sake of it being episodic. Like Resident Evil Revelations 2 came out this year. It was episodic. They knew it was going to be episodic. They released it that way. It came out in a very short period of time, and people liked it. Like Hitman is supposed to be episodic, and they've delayed it because they're like, hey, turns out the stuff that we're putting together, the way that we're putting it together, it's kind of crap. And that's kind of what happened with Spartan Ops Season 1. They were like, we have this cool idea, but then when they started putting it into practice, they were like, this doesn't really work, and then they stop. And so I guess my point is, it would have been cool to see this story in comic form, like Season 1 story in comic form, and then see this like 2 years ago instead of just seeing it now, you know what I mean? And I don't know, I think it would have made the very obvious lull between Halo 4 and Halo 5 just that much less bad, I guess. Like, because I mean, when Halo came back last year, everybody was like, oh my god, thank god. You know,
true, although I think they've kind of ramped up now, and they've found themselves in a better place to
absolutely
keep on top of all this. You know, they've kind of found their flow.
And you know, just this past week or whenever the big announcement for, you know, revealing everything that's coming in the December update and all that stuff, the trailer for it is, this is just the beginning. And they're saying this is just the beginning of us supporting Halo 5 for the next year or two. Like, that's the unspoken words after this is just the beginning. And they're doing it a lot better than they did with Halo 4. And you can tell. And so if they were to try to release something along the lines of Spartan Ops with just different gameplay supporting it, I think it would be more doable now.
Yeah, I guess it was all a learning curve. Like,
oh yeah, for sure, yeah. And I mean, like, good on them for trying something. But it's doing a lot better now. But so what happens? Because this next arc is awesome.
Yes, this is one of my favorites in this. This leads to issues 4 to 6, which I think issue 4 is called Spirit of Fire, and that gives you a clue. Now, there's two ways to do this because this issue jumps all over the fucking place. Do we follow the two arcs separately, or shall we bounce back and forth through it?
No, do it separately so that we can be consistent in the two arcs that we talk about.
We'll go with the Lasky one first. And it starts off anyway. I think it's about a week after the events of the conference, and Lasky and Hood are talking about trying to figure out who the mole is in the UNSC, and Lasky gets permission from Hood to basically go dark for 4 days and do some investigations of his own off the books. So he takes Spartan Ray and a Prowler, and he heads off to the planet Escala 3 to meet his contact, who turns out to be Petra.
Dun, dun, dun. We know her.
None other than Robin Sharbatsky.
Except she looks nothing like Robin Sharbatsky.
What? No, she looks a lot like her, I kind of think, though, a little bit.
What? Get out of here. This was written like a year.
Tall, skinny girl with dark hair, right?
Yeah.
No.
That's Robin Sharbatsky.
So they reveal there that Lasky and Petra have been friends since childhood. They grew up together, and then she went off to be a reporter, and he went off to the UNSC.
Corbulo
See,
Academy
there's their
of Military
background,
Science.
you know? Like, where's the background between Palmer and Lasky? Where's that comic book?
It's just, do you know what it is, Drew? It's a sex scene, and we all know that Halo does not
Sweet.
do sex scenes, so that's why.
So it's going to
cut.
be in a book.
We're going to get a book called Halo 50 Shades of Green. It's going to be Lasky and Palmer's sordid affair for years.
You're fired. You're so fucking
You're
fired.
fired.
Wait, is the soundtrack going to be awesome? Because I'm okay with that.
It could be. I'm going to start writing the fan fiction next week.
Oh, it's probably already out there.
Petra meets Ray and Lasky, and then they go off to find Petra's informant, who is Zeph Trahel on an elite colony called Karava, and he's an elite information dealer, and he points them in the direction of two people that they're looking for. The mercenary that attacked them used to be a commander under Jul Madama called Veda Gejat, I think is about the best name. Yep. And then he also reveals that the mole within the UNSC is a man called Captain Daniel Clayton.
Which is, as a name, doesn't really mean anything.
It doesn't ring any bells, but Lasky then reveals to Petra and Ray that he is the illegitimate son of Captain Cutter.
And we all know who Captain Cutter is, don't we, guys?
Yes, he's the captain of the Spirit of Fire.
What's that?
Which we all know what the Spitter of Fire is, don't we, guys?
It's from that game that no one played.
Oh my,
Spartan
Drew
Strike.
Freeman, don't you dare blaspheme.
This is from Spartan Strike, right?
I hate you so much right now, Drew Freeman.
Yeah, this honestly, I was like, rarely in the history of Halo have I been like, shut up, just like throw the book down or something. Like, are you serious?
I was funny because I know that this moment, I can remember this moment, not like what it was because you didn't spoil it for me, but I remember that like when you had gotten to this point and you were reading, you were like, oh my god, dude, everybody has to read Escalation, and oh my god, read it.
And nobody else was reading when I was reading, right? I don't think anybody else had it.
At the time in the group, there was maybe 2 or 3 people. I think maybe Krista might have had the first volume because she buys the volumes, not the issues.
The volume came way after this, like way after the issue actually coming out.
Did you have the issue?
Yeah, I've bought every issue of Escalation as it came out.
Well, I'm the same now, but I was way after you guys. But when I eventually got on board, like this was the point, like the first 3 issues, I was like, no, this is shit. I don't like Palmer. But then when I got into
like,
like
stick with it.
this,
Come
yeah, when it started like this is called the Spirit of Fire, and I was like, fuck yeah, I'm down with this because I loved Halo Wars and more of that story I want to know. So having this cut in, like James Cutter's kid, I'm like, fuck,
and we're reading
this is
these digitally, right? Like nobody here has bought a physical copy of the.
No, mine's on my phone.
And so doing it digitally, I use the paned thing, so I don't see the whole page ahead of time. So I literally get to that pane, and I'm like, "Whoa, what?" I'm like, "Are you fucking serious?" I'm like, "Oh my god!" And then it's a to be continued like immediately after that. You're like, "Oh my god."
Yeah.
That mic drop.
And we're going to go into the more fun part of this arc, the second half, which has all the big stuff in it. Because whilst all this is going on, if you read this, you'll see it jumps all over the place. Like it goes back and forth. The other half of this, it starts off weirdly in the future. It opens with 2 pages that seem to show something's under attack by a ship that's about to self-destruct. And there's like an image of Majestic flying through the air. With another team of Spartans, and then it cuts to the beginning where it's Lasky and Hood having their little sort of secret conversation, and you're like, what the hell does that first bit have to do with anything? And then it skips on a little bit after Lasky.
It felt like a cartoon for me. Like the opening like the opening scene of like a cartoon that was like, oh my god, this is happening, and then like the opening song of whatever
2
cartoon.
hours
Yeah, yeah. Like it'd be like the Ninja Turtles are just dangling off the side of something, and then it plays the theme song, and now it cuts back to like what led up to that day or whatever.
It was very sort of cool like that. Lasky goes off in his prowler to do his thing with Petra, and then just as Hood's about to take the Infinity for a bit of a joyride, they pick up a distress call. So they go to answer that, and when they get there, they come across this freighter called the Pilgrim's Pride. That's what it's called.
Pilgrim's Pride.
Yeah, they find this ship. It's venting atmosphere. They call Majestic team down to the bay to come and secure it, which is where they come from. And then as they start to draw it in close to the Infinity with Pelicans, it launches fighter ships, and a whole big battle breaks out. And then they realize that the ship's on self-destruct mode. Majestic are sent out to secure the ship and stop the self-destruct, whilst Infinity tries to repel the ships.
Sorry, can I ask you a question there? You've read this, you were marketing this to me. Why are they trying to stop it from blowing up? Like, why do they care?
Because it's inside the maintenance bay of Infinity, and it would blow a hole in the bottom of it.
It's actually inside the Infinity.
I think at that stage they've just about drawn it in, because the orders Majestic have in that first scene are to vent the launch bay and clear the ship.
Fair enough.
So I think they try and get it out. So this ship's about to self-destruct. Majestic board it. They get attacked by some automated turrets, but they eventually manage to dump the ship's core, and the Infinity repels the attackers. I think I was going to say there, if you look in the couple of panes where you see the ships attacking, they all look very familiar. There's a couple of Sparrows, aren't they, or Hawks? The small attack ships out of Halo Wars.
Oh yeah,
Sparrows.
yeah, okay.
And there's a couple of Vultures as well.
Or Hornets. They're not Hornets, are they?
No, it's the upgraded form of the Hornet is a Hawk, I think.
Oh, I know the ones. Yes, you're right.
Yes, the one. So they.
God, Hornets are cool.
Hornets are great. So they have that. They repel them. They pull in the debris to the Infinity, and that's when the crew reveal to Hood that the ships appear to be from the Spirit of Fire.
Dun, dun, dun.
And that ends on like a cliffhanger, and then Roland pulls some information from it that leads to a planet in brute space, and they send Palmer and I think Majestic again to go and investigate. So they go and get on their booster frames, which makes them officially canon from Halo Legends.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you remember these things, they were like motorcycles in space with loads of missiles, and they looked ridiculous. But it was from there. It was the package, wasn't it? It was that super slick one.
Sexy Halsey.
Sexy Halsey.
Oh, where is it? I don't know if it was in this issue. I'm trying to flip through it real quick. There was this big hullabaloo about those when this issue came out. It wasn't really a big deal, but it was. I saw it enough places that they were like, okay, like people are like, I guess making a stink about it on like Twitter. Palmer's call number, she's the only one that has a number. Like it's just one scene that has a number on her what are they called? Booster, on the actual booster frame itself that she's like piloting, and it's 0069. Like, it's just so dumb. Like, somebody was like, why make hers 69? Like, why does it gotta be hers? You know what I mean? Like, so dumb. It just like,
oh my god, discrimination in the comic book world.
I don't think I even noticed
but it is super dumb because none of the other ones even have numbers, because like they're always out of focus or out of frame enough that you couldn't put them out there.
Maybe just some artist joke.
I mean, they're just in a few panels. They're not even very prominent. I mean, I'm looking for the pictures now and I can't see it, so it's possible it's not even there in the digital version.
No, it's in 6. It's in issue 6. But it's just dumb. Like, just what a dumb thing. I remember when that issue came out, people talking about it and being like, I think it was distasteful. Like, who cares?
They're riding motorcycles in space.
Yeah, I know, right?
Oh, I'm looking at it right now. I see it. It's 0069. Yeah.
To be fair, the idea of 69 in a Spartan's utterly terrifying.
I know, right? You gotta wear like stilts or something.
Drew, we're not doing this.
We're not going here.
Yeah,
all right. Fine.
Let's
Christmas.
keep going.
It's Christmas time.
So
Drew.
we carry on.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Very good. Yeah.
Go 69 and Spartan.
Oh.
So that was it. Was that issue 5 that you just kind of talked through real quick?
Yeah, I think that's issue 5.
I've been trying to
give or
follow
take.
along.
So
Like, okay, yeah, I remember that.
Palmer and Majestic get into this asteroid field and they spot a Covenant space station of sorts, so they land on an asteroid and start watching it, and then eventually Infinity comes in with Hood because Hood has to go there and have a look for himself, and no sooner does he arrive than Clayton confronts him on the comms and
Aaron,
calls
just before
him
you
out.
do that real quick, did we mention the connection between Hood and Cutter?
No.
This is where it comes up now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Clayton calls Hood out on all of his shit because Clayton reveals that he is Cutter's son, and that he worked out that someone over the years after Cutter disappeared was sending his mother money, and someone helped him out, and he eventually tracked that back down to Hood, who was doing it as he was looking after his friend's kid basically. And we revealed in this issue that Hood served under Cutter on the Spirit of Fire years ago, and then Cutter got him his own command. And once Hood had his own command, during the Battle of Arcadia, when the Spirit of Fire jumps out and chases the Covenant fleet that kidnapped Dr. What's her name?
Oh, the girl?
Yeah, Dr.
Oh, God. She was Halsey's assistant, or
Yeah.
not assistant slash
Was she?
person who worked with her.
She was like her understudy. Yeah, there's some
Yeah, she was her
real
understudy.
animosity there between them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they got really... Oh, God, they fell out. Oh, God, I can't remember her name. I know he played the game a while
But
ago.
anyway, that when the Spirit of Fire jumps out to follow them, it dropped a message buoy, and Hood's job as commander of his ship was to retrieve the buoy to find out where Cutter was going. But in a moment of, I think Hood calls it just a moment of pride, he decides instead to attack the Covenant fleet, but his ship's no match for them, so they drive him off out of the system, and the buoy was never recovered. Therefore, no one ever found out what happened to the Spirit of Fire, and she was eventually declared missing.
Now, how the hell does he know all this?
So Hood felt guilty about that for years and looked after Clayton and his mother, and made sure that Clayton moved up through the ranks in the UNSC. And this brings us back to their sort of whole argument where Clayton's whole thing is he's pissed off because he got to where he is in life through nepotism and not on his own merits. So he's decided to take his revenge out on Hood and the Infinity, and he opens up on them and reveals that the space station is a glassing cannon, the first time I've ever heard of one of them, and shoots some holes in the Infinity again.
So the Infinity gets its shit pushed in.
Yes, it gets his ass handed to him, and then just before they're able to destroy the Infinity, the glassing cannon conveniently overheats, and that gives Palmer and Majestic a chance to board the space station. They board the space station just as Gajat, the Covenant mercenary, takes his ship away. He's determined to destroy the Infinity to gloat about it and claim a prize, although Clayton did tell him to go and take out Palmer and the Spartan team, but he ignores them. So Palmer gets on the station, secures it and the crew, and then just in time the glassing cannon recharges, so she takes out the Covenant ship and saves the Infinity.
Boom.
Yay!
Boom.
Yeah.
This is Palmer being badass Palmer.
And then about, I think it's 3 days after that, it picks up where Lasky finally gets back to the Infinity. She's still in the asteroid field having repairs made, and it finishes with
The coolest little scene of all time.
it's Hood's,
Well, hold on.
Hood
There's a final confrontation between
there is
Hood.
Hood and
Yeah.
Clayton, yeah, he's in
And
prison.
he
Hood's,
drops a name in here. I'm trying to remember what the hell the deal is with this. Mattias Drake.
He's the
Oh, and he also drops the name of the Midnight Facility in here too.
Yep. Drake is the leader of the New Colonial Alliance.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay.
He's the one that tried to get Crazy Spartan, what's her name?
Elsa?
Elsa. He's the one that tried to get Elsa an initiation to take over the
You
Infinity.
know, Elsa should just let it go. Let it go.
I suppose that's Christmas Eve, so I'll allow it.
Okay, you're allowed it this time.
But yeah,
So
let's
anyway,
get back to this final scene here, though. The payoff.
Hood gets wheeled into the detention room with Clayton in his wheelchair. He's busted up after the whole thing. He's as bad as the Infinity. And
Get this bit, get to the good bit.
yeah, they have a bit of a shouting match back and forth, and eventually it runs to this sort of monologue inside Hood's head where he talks about, years ago I made a mistake that cost me my friend and the rest of it, and it cuts to this few panels. It It's like a fuzzy ship passing a planet, and then it slowly comes into focus, and you see that it's the Spirit of Fire, and then it cuts to inside like a cryo bay, and it still has the monologue going on from Hood. But the interesting thing is there's a warning light flashing, and up in the corner it says abandoned ship, which links back
like the
to
alarm going off.
Yes, which links back to the legendary ending of Halo Wars, if anyone remembers, where just at the very end of it, Serena cuts in over the AI at the end of the, or over the intercom at the end of the credits and says, you know, Captain, wake up, there's a problem. And then on the second last panel in the cryo room, there's a flood spore.
Yeah, and it's good to note that like the cryo bay is empty, all the tubes are open.
Yeah, that's
like,
kind of like the biggest thing there is it's a bunch of
Yeah.
empty. And for me personally, the best part about this scene, even though people don't like Halo or Alien 3, this is such a throwback to Alien 3. Where like everybody survived Aliens, Ripley survived, and the kid survived, and
well, it is just like the end of Aliens.
No,
where it just shows
it's
them
the opening of
with
Alien
the egg
3.
in the corner.
Well, yeah, you know that there's a little alien spore with them, or whatever. Yeah, but in Alien 3, the opening their cryosleep is interrupted because of the presence of the xenomorph on the pod. So I just thought of that for some reason, and Halo's got such a tie to Alien. I think generations now don't really realize that. Like, I think it's far enough removed from proper Alien releases, and this Prometheus shit doesn't count, that people don't really see it. You know, they don't see the ties, because Halo is so well enough now into its own thing, which is great. You know, Halo is its own thing, but this I love that scene. God, that's awesome, man. I put that book down and was just like, holy shit. Like, Spirit of Fire, I'm physically looking at the Spirit of Fire. It's still there. Yep. It still exists. This is today, and you're telling me that everybody's abandoned it, which means they could still be alive somewhere. Because that was how long ago?
In that panel, it has like a planet in the background.
Exactly.
You imagine maybe they did abandon the ship, but they're on
because that planet didn't need to be in the background, man. You could have just had, they don't. That's one thing I do appreciate about 343 and a lot of the lore mongers in the background of all the Halo stuff over the years is if there's a planet somewhere or if this thing has a moon or whatever, like, you need to know where you are. They always know where shit's taking place. It doesn't just happen somewhere in space. Out in space.
Space.
So, yeah, who knows? We'll see. But hell yeah, dude. Great start.
Yeah, it's going to be super relevant in the future, so I think we'll wrap this one up because, funnily enough, we've gone longer once again.
It's kind of what we do.
Happy holidays.
In future, let's just never say this is going to be a short episode.
No, it just jinxes us every time.
Yeah.
Plus, we haven't talked in a while.
Kind of
I missed you guys.
That's true. That needs to happen.
We should probably just talk for a while and then record.
That's true.
That would make sense.
Oh, well.
People like to hear us, Drew.
They
like
right?
to us.
They
like
do.
To hear us talking.
They like the banter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and see our relationship flow.
We don't know any of that to be true, just so you know.
What are you talking about? We have metrics and numbers
I know, right?
from the site.
Yes,
Drew,
my charts here tell me.
All right, let's wrap this up.
Okay,
and we'll go enjoy
Okay.
Christmas.
Let's go.
That's everything. That's volume 1. If you keep an ear out, we will have volume 2 sometime soon, possibly next week if these recordings all line up properly.
But you'll get it much sooner than that.
Yeah.
So
keep listening and you'll enjoy that as well, and then we'll get to volumes 3 and 4 eventually. We will get there, hopefully quicker than we're getting to last
we should keep going for sure.
Look forward to that. I think that's going to do us for this week. You know where to get us in all the usual places. Look for Podcast Evolved on Facebook. Follow us all on Twitter. You got our gamer tags, and we're all just going to run on nice and quick and say Evolved.
Evolved. All right, fine.
No, it's Christmas. It's Christmas time, Drew.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Go 69 and Spartan.